Welcome to Campfire Football. I'm Sebastian North, and VAR video take 479 or whatever. Here's another attempt at a video about VAR. Problems, solutions. You know what would be awesome is to hear from all of you. Anyone who has an opinion, please drop it in the comment section. If you think back on football history, there have been some glaring errors made by referees in high-profile moments, and they became symbols of why we needed to have technology help referees. There's a great rant by Charlie Austin a few years ago in the Premier League where he said this.
We score a perfectly good goal, make it 2-0. Game's done dusted. We win the game. Officials cost us 2 points today, it's standard.
Can you explain why the goal was disallowed?
Yeah, they said it's offside. Hit me, I didn't. I hit it twice. Hit me, bobbed up. That's why I done Foster. It's a joke. They're going about VAR this, VAR that. Help the officials out. Clearly they need help. Clearly, we play in the Premier League, the best league in the world, the most watched league in the world. Give them all the help they need, because clearly they cost us 2 points a day. It's a joke.
And the thing is, at the time, you did get this feeling every single week, and not just every week, but almost every match. You were talking about one decision or another by a referee that people felt was wrong, that the standard of refereeing was getting bad, and that something needed to change to help them. Now, of course, there were people who were very skeptical of the idea of bringing in technology, that it would just muddy the waters, open a Pandora's box, and basically make all the debate worse. Which, I guess is kind of what happened.
How ironic.
So basically, the technology was brought in to help referees, and we wanted to get rid of clear and obvious glaring mistakes that basically, if you looked at once on a video screen, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's an error. The problem is, where does that line end up getting drawn? What is considered clear and obvious? So Simon Jordan, you may know him as having been the chairman of Crystal Palace. You probably know him better as now being a talking head on Talk Sport Radio in England. And I think he has addressed exactly why this was brought in very well.
Because the reasons why we're here is clear. Because no one would shut up about the mistakes that were being made or issues that were had with the nature of the way that football's progressed. The reasons why we've now got extra minutes, not just because of VAR, it's because players simulate and cheat and waste time. But they've got the audacity to sit there and go, we feel a bit tired and the games are going on until 9:30. And why is that?
Simon Jordan's right. Like, players and managers, they've figured out how to con referees in certain ways and make it very difficult for them to get decisions correct. And refereeing is extremely, extremely difficult. Anyone who has not tried it doesn't have the slightest clue. Now, the Premier League, on their website, they actually have an entire page on what VAR is, what it was for, why it was brought in, etc. So how does VAR work? For subjective decisions, either the referee informs the VAR that a decision should be reviewed, or the VAR identifies a clear and obvious error. What qualifies as a clear and obvious error? In testing, there was no unanimity. Different VARs come up with different outcomes. Of course they do. This one's interesting. Who asks for VAR to be used during a match? Only the referee, who can inform the VAR that a decision should be reviewed. There's a lot of consternation about that. How long will decisions take? In 2019-2020, the average delay matches caused by VAR was 50 seconds. Guys, yeah, which is all of a sudden now why we have something like 8 minutes of stoppage time added at the end of every half. And that's part of the reason why we have so many problems with this. It has been quite the season for VAR, mostly because we had one specific incident that was brand new. And that happened on September 30th when Spurs hosted Liverpool at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Luis Diaz was through on goal, clean in, scores, and is flagged offside. Now, this happens all the time. Goals are scored, gets flagged offside, they check it, and if the decision is wrong by the assistant referee, the goal is given. And for the most part, they get these right because, offside is pretty objective. Problem was, they made a massive, massive communication error. Now, the leader referees, Howard Webb, was being really heavily pressed on what happened. Although they admitted that there was a massive human error, everyone wanted to know, how did that happen? Release the audio! What was fascinating is when they did. If you haven't heard it yet, enjoy.
So 2D line on the video.
Stop. Check complete. It's fine. Perfect.
Yeah.
Off. Thank you, mate.
Wait. On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this?
Yeah.
Are you happy with this?
Offside goal. Yeah. That's what it does.
What?
On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this image? Yeah, it's onside. The image we get is onside.
Left back. He's gone offside.
Delay. They're only saying to delay. Only saying to delay.
Pardon?
Ollie's calling in to say delay the game. To complete the decision is also.
Can't do anything.
Ollie's saying to delay.
Ollie?
Yeah.
Delay the game.
Stop the game.
They've restarted the game.
Yeah, they've restarted. Yeah.
Can't do anything.
No.
I can't do anything.
That's rough. When I first heard that, I was like, well, it kind of sounds like Apollo 13 or audio of like a plane crash. I mean, hearing the guy go,
I can't do anything.
which obviously brought up a whole bunch of questions. Why can't you do anything? Stop the game. You've made a massive mistake. Stop the game. And then some of the ideas and solutions people had to this situation were crazy. First, you already had Klopp asking for a replay.
I think the outcome should be a replay. The argument against that will probably be if we open that gate, then everybody will ask for it. I think the situation is that unprecedented that it didn't happen before.
But then you had a whole bunch of people saying, look, even if it's a minute after, stop the game, award the goal. Well, yeah, then what? Do the Spurs players go, oh, hold on. The rules are once play restarts, you can't go back. That's the rule. You're not just going to change it now because you made a mistake. Look, we've made a massive error. That's a goal. We're going to give it.
Or the ref has the opportunity to bring both coaches together and say, sorry, we made a mistake, but we can sort it. Let Liverpool score a goal and we start from there.
We've made a giant mistake. Spurs, do you mind just letting Liverpool score so that, we can absolve ourselves of this error? If I was a Spurs player in that moment, I'd be like, no, that is your error. You make errors in games. Teams either profit off them or don't. We're not just going to graciously give them a goal because you made a mistake. That's not our responsibility. Now, you would like to think that everyone would just say, look, that's true. Let's all just settle this, make it fair. Of course not. This is the professional elite level. They are going to do anything and everything they can to get every single margin going in their direction. Here's Big Ange Postecoglou, Spurs manager, saying exactly that.
You know what managers do? I'll tell you what managers do, me included. We try and find ways to bend the rules, to get around them. Tell me what the rule is, and I guarantee you'll have a room full of managers processing how can I get around this.
Also, let's take a moment. Simon Hooper. He was the referee in that Spurs-Liverpool match, and there's a moment where you can see him with his eyes wide open, listening.
Yeah, they've restarted. Yeah.
Can't do anything.
Now, he is a referee. What he is trained at is being on the field, making decisions in real quick time, and trying to do the best he can. He is not someone who has spent years and years and years in some kind of broadcast studio with an earpiece in, having two producers telling him what to do, when to go to commercial, when to move on from this topic, and also curate the conversation with the nitwits that are on the set. Talking about the old days and about how when they were playing, things were, better, I guess. Anyway, that audio was incredible. It was so eye-opening in so many ways. What was fascinating, first of all, was the shorthand that they have, because a lot of people complain about the amount of time it takes for referees to come to decisions. Here's Alan Pardew saying basically that.
But I do think this time element is becoming an issue, and they need to address that. We can't be sitting there 4 or 5 minutes waiting for a decision. It's rubbish.
And for a lot of the people who believe that VAR should be tossed out, thrown in the bin, gotten rid of completely, let's go back to where we were before, they're going to use this as an example. Thing is, it's not a very good one. That was just a communication error that's actually not that hard to fix. Newcastle versus Arsenal at St. James's Park. Anthony Gordon smashes in a rebound from 2-3 yards out, and of course, the goal gets checked.
Check a potential foul on Gabriel. So have you got high behind for me, please? Yep. That's great. Just run that through a little.
Stu, we've cleared the ball staying in. We're now checking for the back post challenge, mate.
From the other end, which might be better.
Yeah, okay, no problem. It could be a handball. I don't see a specific foul on Gabriel. I see 2 hands on his back, but I don't see anything of a push that warrants him flying forward like that.
Right, there's a potential for, as Stuart said, there's a potential for handball, but it's not the goal scorer.
No, it's not the goal scorer, and it's not deliberate from anywhere. Right, Stuart, I need you to look at the screen for me, mate, please.
Yeah,
so I'm seeing that the ball comes off Joe Linton with no specific foul there.
Confirming that I can award the goal.
Yeah. Confirmed award the goal, restart with a kickoff.
Now, at the beginning of the sequence, the ball looked like it had actually gone out of play in the corner. And if you think back to the World Cup in Qatar, where Japan were awarded a goal after what looked like the ball went out, and everyone said, kind of inconclusive. If you don't know, you can't call it back. And in the end, the goal was allowed to stand. Why? I mean, honestly, because the refs had spent over 4 minutes looking at it, and they went, I don't know. Like, we have looked at this a million times. And actually, I really do respect that from the referees, because one of the complaints that we've had since the beginning is if you need to look at something forensically like 45 times over the space of 3 or 4 minutes, that ain't clear and obvious. Arsenal and Mikel Arteta, their manager, they did not see it that way.
Yeah, we have to talk about the result, because you have to talk about how the hell this goal stand up, and it's incredible. I feel embarrassed. But I have to be the one now coming here to try to defend the club and please ask for help, because it's an absolute disgrace that this goal is allowed. It's an absolute disgrace.
Hey, it's a disgrace! It's a disgrace! It's a fucking disgrace!
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Apologies. Why? Do you think it's a disgrace? Because it's not a goal. For many reasons, it's not a goal. For more than one reason, at least, it's not a goal.
I just love how he puts emphasis on saying, how the hell? I just love this rant. It's great. Now, Mikel Arteta has been charged by the FA for this outburst because it was pretty below the belt. And it's understandable that the FA and the Premier League would be pissed about this, because he's basically just calling them out for being incompetent when these problems are not isolated to England. I don't even need to get into the mistakes I've seen in La Liga or in Brazil. Actually, speaking of Brazil, here is John Textor, the owner of Botafogo, American man. Here's his rant after a recent match that Botafogo lost.
Not a red card. He got the ball first. If it's even a foul, I'm not sure. It is not a red card. He changed the game. This is corruption. This is a theft. Please find me, Edinaldo, but you need to resign tomorrow morning. That's what needs to happen. This championship has become a joke. Nobody deserves this. These players from Palmeiras, they don't want to win this way. We don't want to lose this way. It's like 5 games in a row. Gentlemen, you played a good game. It's not your fault, but this is corruption. This has to change. Edinaldo, you need to resign for the good of the game. It has to be over now. This is theft. Find me. You can red card me. Right? It's my stadium. I'll still be here.
I mean, dude, we're getting to the point where they're asking the president of the league or whatever to resign. There was another crazy situation that recently happened in Brazil after Grêmio and Corinthians played each other. The director of football at Corinthians went and stormed the VAR booth after the game trying to get in. Now, the VAR booth in Brazil is actually in the stadium, not at some remote location. I don't understand how these are proper solutions. More than anything, these just look like performative rants that, I don't know, are supposed to make the fans like you more, or like, I don't know. Here's Gary Neville talking about how VAR has gotten to the point where none of us can really agree anymore.
And you're asking yourself the question, is VAR adding to the excitement? Is it taking away from the excitement? It's certainly adding to the debate. But you don't even agree with your own mate. I mean, there are such credible people in the last few days that have watched that Newcastle goal and have said it should have been disallowed, that I think, are credible people who've played the game who haven't played the game. And then there are credible people who've played the game who haven't played the game who think the goal should have been allowed. So we're all split, really, on the same decision. And yet, the debate is whether we should continue with VAR or not. What we should say is that a real shocker of a decision? No. And that's where we're at this moment in time. There's a real lack of confidence in what's happening. But I do genuinely think that comes from, yes, the referees and the decisions that are being made. But I also think it's to do with the pylon that's come through. Really, this is sort of dangerous, I think, statements that have been made by big clubs in our country. We need to get rid of that. I'm pretty certain of that.
So Gary Neville is right about a few things here. Number one, it was not a shocker of a decision to allow that Gordon goal. It's debatable, of course, but it's not a shocker. And he's also right that clubs coming out and making these official statements backing the manager saying that all officiating in England is terrible, a disgrace, and subpar is not really a good look at all. And this is the kind of thing that filters from the top down. If the top people at the club are putting out statements saying, yes, we disagree, the referees are terrible, then that just kind of unleashes the players and managers to treat them like crap every week. I mean, recently Roberto De Zerbi was saying that he dislikes 80% of Premier League referees. As Big Ange Postecoglou, Spurs manager, says, the bad part about this is that the ref's authority is just being completely eroded.
Premier League managers should just manage their football clubs. I've never, and I never will, talk to a referee about the rules of the game. I think it's so hard for a referee to officiate these days. Their authority is just constantly getting diminished.
So what are the officials to do? How are they going to react and adjust to this? Well, they'll do whatever they can to avoid pylons by simply pointing at the rules and saying that they enforce them. And then that's the end of it. And they'll basically just log it as a correct decision, even though there's tons of people who think they got it wrong. Now, why does that happen? Look, we've gotten to the point where the game is no longer actually being officiated by referees. It is being litigated by the laws of the game, and they are just trying to cover their own asses, to be honest. They're trying to keep the mistakes at the absolute lowest they can. And by doing that, they're going to be like, look, some people are going to hate it, some people will like it. But what we did was we followed the letter of the law.
If we're going to be standing up and complaining about decisions every week, then they're going to go through them forensically. And we're just going to have to stand around and wait for them. And I don't like it. I've never liked it. I've always, in my 26 years, been prepared to accept the referee's decision, good, bad, or otherwise. And trust me, I've had some shockers in my career. I've had some go my way as well. But I could stomach that. But I don't think it's what football's about, waiting around.
I agree with Ange completely. Waiting around during a game is annoying. But when it happens multiple times for VAR reviews, yes, it's really frustrating. Now, I agree, 4 minutes is too long to just be standing around, but they are doing it because they're under so much pressure to basically see every situation and make a decision. The last thing the referees want is for on a Monday morning, everyone goes, oh, look, the referees with VAR, they missed this. They couldn't even see this. That's why they're looking everything over microscopically. There is also an irony to everyone complaining about how much time it takes. Should they take all the time they need, or should they have some kind of timer and do it really quickly and then possibly miss something they're going to get trolled for a week? Remember, when Spurs played Liverpool and there was that big error by the referees, the audio that we heard, the main complaint at the time was, take your time. We don't care how long it takes, get the decision right. And a month later, everyone's like, oh my God, do they really need 4 minutes to get the decision correct? Oh my God, people are so bad at making up their minds. IFAB do have this panel where they have some ex-players and ex-referees, and there's a panel of 5 to make sure that there's no tie in the voting. And they vote on whether or not they think a decision was right or wrong.
So the Premier League's independent key match incident panel, Martin, looked at that Gordon situation, looked at the goal, 4-1, agreed that the goal should have stood.
This is obviously subjective, even though it goes to VAR. And I don't agree with the panel. That couldn't be a goal because it must have been a foul. Watched it back, 2 hands on his back, Gabriel.
So Martin Keown makes a point that there's 2 hands on the back of Gabriel. But the real question for VAR was it actually enough for him to be going over? Was he already sort of launching himself in that direction?
I don't see a specific foul on Gabriel. I see 2 hands on his back, but I don't see anything of a push that warrants him flying forward like that.
That really was the big question. And VAR decided, no, it's a goal. Now, that match also was a little bit out of control. You have to remember Kai Havertz got a yellow card for a tackle many thought should have been red.
This same panel said, do you know something? Havertz should have been red carded, and he wasn't.
My personal opinion, again, the referee said yellow on the field, and when you look back at the replay, there's not enough to say that's a big error.
He comes in and it's the trailing leg that he catches. I think Havertz was really on the edge there, and I wouldn't advise him to make that kind of tackle. But I can see the common sense in why he wasn't sent off.
You can't give a red card because a tackle was potentially worse than it ended up being. It doesn't work that way. Later on, you got Bruno Guimaraes just straight up cold cocking Jorginho in the back, just duffs him. Now, the referee missed that one because it was behind the play, but VAR looked at it and were like, nah, there wasn't really enough contact. You didn't really catch him hard enough for it to be violent. I disagree with that. I mean, that's the kind of thing you do if you're trying to escape a bear and there's someone in front of you and you're the one that's going to get caught. Just duff them and run. And that brings me to the point of talking about solutions. Some of the solutions people have had are, I don't know how well they've thought them through, because really they're just going to probably create more issues, create more of a Pandora's box of problems. But there are some creative things that people have thought about. For instance, here's Darren Bent with his 3 main things.
One of them would be to have ex-players in the... I've said it from day one, just to see it from a different perspective. Like if a defender leaves his foot in and it looks like it's accidental, you can get a player in there that goes, I'm telling you now, he meant to do that. It wasn't accidental. He's left his foot there knowing this could happen.
We already know that when you put ex-players, ex-referees, and people together, they don't agree. And you've all seen it. If you've watched any review show or whatever, they'll have a panel of like 3 or 4 ex-pros, and they won't agree. And yet, literally in the next sentence, they'll say, we should have guys like us in there because we've got the common sense. So I don't really think players in the VAR booth is actually going to make any kind of difference.
Right. Another thing I think is the challenges. I think maybe bring in some challenges. Maybe each team gets 2 challenges. You can't challenge an offside because that's black and white.
Challenges. Really? So, for instance, if a team uses a challenge or 2 on things that are totally correct and they actually nail them and they get them right, do they get to keep the challenge? Does the challenge go away if they're wrong? And let's say no challenges are remaining and a team knows no challenges are remaining, so a guy just punches a ball in the goal and is like, if the ref didn't see it, this is going to count because the other team can't challenge it and VAR won't come in. Oh, my God.
And another thing as well, which I hate and I can't stand, I think we've spoke about it before, when the referee goes over to the screen, say that Romero challenge, which was a red card, but don't have the image on the screen of Romero's foot halfway up the guy's shin and play it at real speed. If you slow anything down, it looks appalling, doesn't it?
Yes. Once again, what do you expect? The refs aren't trying to operate in some weird gray area. They have to come up with a certain set of criteria that they can just check off and say, yep, that's enough to say red. And that covers our asses. And yes, I do think this is one area of room for improvement for VAR, but surely this is not a huge deal and won't really address any of the major problems. And now they're apparently going to start trialing sin bins. I think this is a shambolic idea. I mean, they're talking about 10 minutes for an orange card offense or a cynical play or even dissent to the referee. So teams would be down a player for a 10-minute stretch for some incident that happens in a game that is probably subjective anyway. But for a team to go down a player in a football match for 10 minutes is a huge deal. So what is the effect that that would have on the game? Not a good one, in my opinion. So first of all, it would cause a tactical mess. You would have teams basically bunkering down for a 10-minute stretch, probably wasting as much time as humanly possible, which renders the game a worse spectacle. You also have the fact that players are going to be sitting on the sideline and then having to come back on. You see the injury risks there. If the referee decides that's not a yellow, it's not a red, so I'm going to give him an orange card and send him to the sin bin. VAR would obviously have a look at that, so we would just have more time wasted by this garbage. Some suit somewhere must think this is like a dramatic addition to the game that will be great for the viewing experience, and it's totally unnecessary because the laws in place are already fine. They just need to be enforced by referees. And if the referees and VAR are unable to manage and officiate the game properly, that's a different problem. But the sin bins are stupid. I hope they die on arrival, to be honest. Let me give you a couple solutions on my end, and then we'll just wrap this up. Referees should be the ones in charge of asking for digital. That's exactly what the Premier League says on their website, by the way, that the referee is the one that asks for VAR decisions. We all know that's not exactly how it works. They'll make a decision and all of a sudden they got someone in their ear saying, hey, buddy, you made a mistake.
The rules have got to fit the game rather than the game fitting the rules.
Right.
And they've got it asked about face. And I've always maintained that the digital technology was brought in to aid and abet referees, not to be a default setting. It was one of the things that I felt that referees needed to help them with the evolution of 24-hour broadcasting that has 360-degree scrutiny. Now digital technology is the blunt instrument to whack officialdom and say, it's gotten worse.
What a paradox. Bring in the technology and then find a whole bunch more problems to bitch about. So what I think is that referees should be the ones really in charge. They should be the head honcho on the field. And if, for instance, they make a call, they should be able to say, okay, I think I see a penalty. I am awarding it, but I'm not 100% sure. If this is at all debatable, can you please load me up a replay? I'll come over, take a look, and I'll either decide whether I'm sticking with my decision or not. Versus having VAR going, so we're looking at it. There is contact, and I think you missed something. And this is when referees are now reversing the decision not to award a penalty, awarding it over the tiniest touch of like a toe on a shin. We know you can't please everybody, so why would you change a decision that one side's going to be pissed about, the other's going to like, to then just reverse who's mad at you and who likes you? So I would like to see referees really in charge. The VAR should only intervene if they're like, dude, like, this is glaring. This is going to be a big problem if you don't change your mind on this, or at least look at it again. So a few other solutions regarding VAR. Number one, semi-automated offside needs to be brought into the Premier League. This is not something you can do in the wider world of football. The tech requires 12 cameras that are dedicated to as many as 29 data points on each player, 50 times per second. So a lot of the tech for objective decisions is actually quite expensive, right? The goal line technology, it's not even used in Spain. They were like, it doesn't happen enough for us to warrant needing to spend the money on it. But I really think the main two things that VAR has to fix are, number one, the language that they use to come to decisions, and their bar for when they get involved. So when we talk about reviewing the language, it's very important to look at the things they say. For instance, when talking about red cards, they use the criteria endangering the safety of an opponent and using excessive force. Now, for me, there's already a little bit of subjectivity within those descriptions. If you take a look at Marcus Rashford's red card against Copenhagen, and here's a little clip of two referees completely disagreeing on whether it should have been red or not.
Don't get me wrong, I know the difference between serious foul play and reckless, and I just felt that there was a bit of subjectivity on that challenge because it didn't meet the criteria of serious foul play. And I just felt it was more reckless than serious foul play. But Christine will say it's a red, and I thought it was yellow. So there's the subjectivity from two people, two referees in one challenge.
Yeah, I know, right? And then you guys are sitting there being like, wait, you guys have the exact same training. One of the things that people had to eliminate from their mindset is intent. Everyone was hanging their hat. Micah Richards was hanging his hat on intent. Rashford didn't intend to do this. I'm like, you're 100% correct. He didn't intend to
not in the laws of the game.
Intent isn't in the laws of the game.
That's
and people
right.
are like, well, there wasn't malice, there wasn't this. You don't need that. We're looking at factual scenarios, and it's just helping people to understand from a refereeing perspective, what were the facts that threw that over? So when we talk about serious foul play and excessive force, the excessive force element comes into the context of that play. And here the Copenhagen player's foot is set, studs in, next to the ball, and it's trapped. It's caught. The feet are in the grass. And because its foot's stuck in it, you don't need a lot of excessive force. You don't need Rashford running in 15, 20 yards, studs in, and taking him out.
Now, it's interesting that they stress so much that intent has nothing to do with the decision-making process and that it's not actually a part of the rules as they're written. Now, I get it. You can't live in a player's head, but when you are seeing a tackle, there is a difference between a tackle with actual malice, where a player is meaning to get even, and one where they're just a fraction of a second later, they didn't really see the player. I think the referees can tell for the most part. But that's also why we're seeing players get sent off for completely accidental or incidental contacts where they're just stepping on a player's ankle. And if you want to remove the idea that intent is part of it, well, you can't just assume that someone stepping on someone's ankle is violent. Okay, so intent is out. But if you look in the rules, the word deliberate is directly in the laws for handball. Look, handballs, very, very, very few are like intentional, where a player's sticking their arm up to block a ball. That almost never happens. So the vast majority of handballs are already accidents. That does not mean deliberate. Now, when they say deliberate, they're also including that a player is making their body unnaturally bigger or that their body is in an unnatural position. We hear this all the time. But what the hell is an unnatural position? I mean, you've got referees now breaking down individual players' body mechanics. And handball is a jungle and wilderness in and of itself. I am not going to get into it here. I actually already made a video about how no one agrees on what a handball is anymore. But VAR has made it worse. When you slow images down of a player running and their hand comes up and it hits the ball, it's so glaring. But in reality, so many of these are completely accidental, and who actually benefits from it? A lot of the time, a defensive team doesn't benefit from the ball having hit their hand and bounced somewhere else. And I think that should be taken into account, especially when something is clearly an accident. But the biggest thing to me is that VAR need to raise the bar of when they actually get involved in a situation. They really have to stay out of things that look subjective. If it's objective, yes, get involved, help the call get corrected. For instance, Raheem Sterling scored against Spurs. The ball hit his hand right before he shot it in. It's a handball because a player who is scoring cannot handle the ball right before they score. That is cut and dry in the rules, no arguing it. and they got it right. The goal would have stood without VAR being there. But there's so many situations where VAR is involved to overturn or check a decision that from the very beginning you can tell is subjective. And you know one way or another, one team's going to be happy, the other team isn't. And so from that point, VAR should just not even get involved. If the referee, as I said, wants to take another look, they can. Unless there is a major factual decision wrong, VAR should just stay out of it. I mean, referees can take the abuse. They've been doing it forever. But the reality is VAR is not going anywhere. They just need to improve it. And I think that people actually giving them solutions is better than saying, you're all idiots, you're all incompetent, and we don't want you. We probably should lay off the referees a little bit so they can just do whatever job they do. Sometimes they'll suck, sometimes they'll be good.
But just to push you a little bit, any complaints at all about the Romero red or the Udogie red? No, I've already said that, that's whatever decision they've made. At some point, we've got to accept the referee's decision. That's how I grew up. Yeah. And I keep saying that. And I said that last time, This constant erosion of referees' authorities, well, this is where the game's going to get. They're not going to have any authority, and it's going to get diminished. And we're going to be in the control of somebody a few miles away watching a TV screen. So decision's a decision. You either accept it or you don't.
Well said, Ange. We argued about decisions before, but now we have to stand around and wait for 4 minutes and complain about some technology and the way it's being used by officials. Look, I do think that the referees and their decision on the field needs to be respected and their authority needs to just be accepted.
Because people are seeking some kind of utopia where all decisions are correct. That doesn't exist.
All right, I'm stopping because or else I'll be here forever. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Sebastian North. This is Campfire Football.